sermonette today I entitled The Pledge of Ruth. I thought about the book of Ruth because it's about the time of Pentecost, and we're a week or so away from Pentecost now. And so it's a seasonal message from that point of view. There is a qualifier for everybody that will be with Christ at his return. You'll find that written about in a number of places, but the place that I chose to use in this message today, Revelation 17 and verse 14. There it says, as Christ is viewed from the Apostle John, who wrote the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 14, these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords, King of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. That's the three qualifiers for those people who will be with Christ at his return. First of all, they're called, and who calls us? God the Father calls each one of us, and it's stated in the book of John that you cannot come to the knowledge of God unless God the Father calls you. And then chosen, who is it that chooses? Well, Jesus Christ, it says, is the one who chooses us. And then we have our responsibility to be faithful to the calling and the choosing. So these shall make war with the Lamb. The Lamb shall overcome them. That's background information. Not going to try and explain all of that to you now. He is Lord of lords, King of kings, and there will be a group of people with him at that time. And those people are called, chosen, and faithful. Wanted to, in this message, speak to an example of a person who meets all three of those characteristics. That person is Ruth. And the book of Ruth is a book in which there is a contrast between two women. They're both called by God. One is faithful and lives up to that calling. The other is not. So what I want to do is to look at the pledge of Ruth. Ruth made a pledge and show you a story of redemption through the pledge that she made and she fulfilled. The other woman is Orpah. They were both Moabite women. Neither one of them was an Israelitish woman, but they both married an Israelitish man. Their situation of the two of them very different. Very, very much the same, but the outcome was very, very much different. Both were originally determined to move to Israel when their husbands died. They married brothers, and the two brothers died, leaving the two wives and the mother-in-law behind. Ruth made a pledge to her mother-in-law, and she kept that pledge. Orpah was originally inclined to make the same pledge, but she turned back. And so what was the pledge? The pledge was that they would go to Israel with their mother-in-law and live there. One of them was faithful to the pledge that she made. That was Ruth. And the other one turned around and went back along the way. Her name was Orpah. Ruth and Orpah. They are a contrast for us to look at and to understand that there is a pledge that we make in the same way as they did. Ruth's pledge. Reading in the book of Ruth, and as I say, the book of Ruth is a book which we would read around the time of Pentecost because it relates very much to the scriptures that have to do with Pentecost. And we might say the book of Ruth itself is a book for Pentecost. I would say, it's my opinion, it's not necessarily confirmed by other things other than my opinion, but I would say the book of Ruth is an allegory in addition to a physical, actual occurrence between the two. Ruth chapter 1, verse 15, Naomi, the mother-in-law, says, I'm going back to Israel. The two of you go back to your homes and your families. You're from the Moabitish extraction. Don't try to follow me to Israel. It won't necessarily be very good for you there. And Naomi said to the two of them, Ruth and Orpah, because Orpah was going to go back with Ruth. But she turned around. Verse 15, she said, Naomi, the mother-in-law, said, behold, your sister-in-law is gone back to her people. She said that to Ruth. Orpah's gone back to her people. That's what you should do. You go back as well. Return you after your sister-in-law. Verse 16, Ruth said, do not, this is one of the most famous and well-known pledges, not only in the Bible, but in secular society as well. Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, to her mother-in-law, or return from following after you. Wherever you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Verse 17, where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. And she lived up to that pledge. She lived up to that pledge. And it was a remarkable thing, and it's remembered until this day. And Orpah saw that Ruth was not going to listen to her about going back to the land of Moab, and she stopped trying to convince her. Verse 18. I say it's, and many people liken this to the commitment we make whenever we're baptized, that we are going to keep the pledge that we have made no matter what it takes. And that's kind of a summary of what we just read from Ruth. For us, like for Ruth, there is no turning back once we have made that covenant. Once we have made that pledge, it is something that we must keep. There is another character when they get back to Israelite. His name is Boaz. And Boaz, it doesn't give you that information immediately upon reading the book of Ruth, but he is a kinsman of Naomi. And in Ruth chapter 4, verse 7, after all of the things that went on, you maybe should read that book and see how it relates to you as we approach the day of Pentecost. This was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man would take off his shoe and a man took off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony to Israel. Ruth had gone through a series of things, and now she was a near kinsman through marriage, and a man instead of Boaz had first choice. It's like the NFL draft, I guess. You have a first choice, and she was obligated, and so was the man, to be a redeemer. To redeem means to buy back. And so there were two individuals there, two men who were in the position to buy back Ruth. and he was whoever did that would be the redeemer. The kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for you. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said to the elders and unto all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, all that was Chilion's and Mahon's, they were the two husbands that died, of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead will not be cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place you are my witnesses this day. So I guess I could take off my shoe, hold it up, and point at Hazel. You'll all be my witnesses that I have acquired her permanently. And it's been a while now, 57 years, 58, I've just been informed. So that's the situation. And I didn't take off my shoe, but I would. If anybody needs me to, I will. The people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are your witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come unto your house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do you worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. There are two women, I believe. Matthew makes his listing of the lineage in the very first chapter of the book of Matthew, the listing of the lineage of Christ. And who do you think is in that lineage? Ruth is in the lineage of Christ. She's a Gentile woman, and that would be sort of unusual for Matthew to put in his book. It says in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, Salmon begot Boaz of Rachab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth. So Ruth's son is then traced in the lineage of Christ, and Obed begot Jesse. Jesse begot David. It doesn't. I don't have that written in my notes, but that's still the situation. And so from that time on, Ruth was always, because of the pledge that she made, and because she was very, very faithful in keeping that pledge, she appears in the lineage of Christ. When we are baptized, we make a similar pledge. So let's all do as Ruth did and be faithful in that pledge.